Hi guys, Jamie here from Artful. You'll have seen that I have a few tutorials in the magazine, so hopefully those have been useful. But what we're going to do today, and this is our first video, so I'm keen to hear what you think about it, is walk you through how to create one of these using your A5 Faber-Castell sketchbook pages. So what I've done is I've used a selection of the tools in the box, only these four. So what we have is a mechanical pencil, and if you haven't seen it already, this end comes off. I think we tried to show you in the magazine on the contents page, but there is a little rubber in there, a little eraser, so that's very useful. We'll use both types of eraser in this, but the benefit of this one is because it's small, it allows you to get some of the finer lines. The other one that we've got is our sort of more standard kind of eraser. It is useful because what you see at the beginning of this video is that I've got a base drawing, which we've included in the comments of this and also in the email. So there's a link to get the source material that I'm drawing from, and then also that template. So you can you start from the same point as me. But what I do is I'm putting down an initial drawing, which allows me to place elements. So off the back of that, it's very easy for me to then start padding out the detail. What I will do though is gradually remove all of that base drawing, because what I don't want it to do is to compete with the lines that I'm putting down. So 2 bits of material so far, and then the second 2 are a 2B and a 4B Faber-Castell. The benefit to using a HB, which is in this, and the 2B and the 4B, is you get a lot of depth in line. So I'll start mostly with this, and I'll annotate when I'm swapping. I use a little bit of the 2B, and then the 4B is basically the end where I really want to get some of the detail in. It's not really about having loads of tricks up your sleeve initially. It literally is about placing lines, and it's about how you articulate fur with a line, and it is much simpler than you think it would be. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at a shot, like a consistent shot of me drawing it, and what I'll do is I'll talk you through exactly what I'm doing when I'm doing it.
Right, so I just want to point out the fact that I've got a massive black mark on my thumbnail. It's because Scout, my dachshund, he went a little bit cray when we were playing stick one day, and my thumb somehow managed to get in between. No bad intentions on his part, I just got in the way. Right, so what I'm doing first off is I like to find a key bit of information that I want to get right. So I'm focusing on the tail, and as I said in the preamble before, I'm using the thicker rubber to remove the outer edge, but I have got the basis of the drawing already down. So at the moment I'm using the mechanical pencil, which is HB lead, and I'm just gesturing. As you can see, I'm doing flicks with my wrist to kind of get a flow of fur. What I like to do is try and have these join. So you'll see that I'll marry up an edge with an edge, or I'll get an element to flow around part of another. So I'm rubbing out some stuff there because it wasn't exactly what I wanted, but I'm just going in to put certain marks in. The HB lead in this, which is at 0.5, is good for most things, but it won't do really, really fine points. You can get, within the Faber-Castell range, you can get a 0.3, and I think you can get a 0.1, which is basically like a needle, if you did want to do super fine lines. But obviously it's kind of relative to what size work you're doing. With this one, you could probably get away with doing a 0.3, but if you're doing something absolutely minute, you can see why 0.1 would be beneficial. So just layering in, just adding on, and I'm just, like I say, building the basis for that fluffy tail. I tend to prefer to get the parameters and stuff set up. So you'll see that I'll do up to the limits of the tail, and then I'll start to work around the outline of the body of the thing. Also, I had some difficulties with this. I filmed this about 3 times because the first time I did it, it was focusing on the wrong part, and then I've done another one where I've got it as it's focused on the paper, but it's obviously very difficult to gauge where the camera is focusing, or if it is going to be super focused when you've got a drawing, so I've had difficulty. What I'm doing here is, like I say, I'm adding in the outline of the guy, and I'll use you can see around the top of the head, which kind of links into the tail, the hairs are longer because as you can imagine, the flow of hair and the flow of fur generally, and also that part of the dormouse's body, neck, whatever we're calling it, the hairs will be longer, whereas right now around the nose, they're tiny little hairs, and what you can do is you can literally almost just put points in, just little dots. So we've gone ahead a little bit, and now just starting to build out, just erasing that edge, and then I put the back edge in, and you can see that certain parts of it are very small hairs, but also some are longer because you want it to feel like there's a massive hair kind of wrapping around him. Just a bit more there. So you can obviously change the pressure that you're putting, exerting on the pencil, and you will get fainter lines. It's really important in key areas of detail. Like the winning elements for this piece are going to be, basically how cute it ends up being. And part of that is about the eye, because it's this little, sleepy dormouse. And I think if you over-egg it on the lines, especially around the eyes, you're kind of going to kill that, because it's going to feel too heavy. You want to have lighter lines here. So you can see I'm not applying that much pressure. Just slowly zooming out so you can kind of get a better sense of it. Right, just using the 2B, I'm just adding some more depth to the eye, because as I say, that is a winning element and you kind of want people to go there first. Another important thing is to make sure that there is depth between his fuzzy little tail and everything else, because you want it to look like it is, massive and fluffy. So again, under the hand and then around that tail, just adding in that depth, because if it doesn't kind of look like it's pulling up, and it looks like it's got a decent amount of fluff to it, it just won't be as kind of cute, if that's what we're judging it on. So just adding in again, flowing with the kind of the waves that we got within that tail, just adding in lines. So just move back to the head, just adding in faint lines here, because you can imagine the rest of this, all of the body is basically going to be end up covered in hairs. Get my words out. And what people tell you to do is they'll tell you to work from right to left. And I go on to mention this in the drawing because I can never do that. And the reason being because there's certain areas that are more interesting to me. I can't work from right to left as a pure thing, because you want to get your key details right, and then you want to move around and you want to layer it in. As you can see there, I've added in a bit more depth for my mind, because I'm like, well, I need to make sure the bottom bit of the tail kind of works in. So I've added those lines. Now what I'm doing is I'm literally just making tiny little dashes, but there's lots of them. And this indicates a different style of fur again. So this is more like very short kind of fluffy strands. It's not like, like the big gestural tail. Just lots of little dots. And this, I'm just noting now with the annotation, I change my grip a lot, but I don't do that in real life. The reason that I'm changing my grip a lot with this is because there's a certain direction I want the line to go in. And because it's a fixed piece of paper, this was literally like stuck to the table because I didn't want it to move. You have to move your hand to make the line do what you want it to do. Ordinarily, you would turn the page. Just building some more of the face, which is where it's the key area for me normally with everything. It's actually quite rare that I do something with closed eyes, because I tend to always have something with expressive eyes. Just layering again. You change the length of your line. Obviously, it will give you... It's that variety that makes it kind of feel quite rich. So I've just zoomed out so you can see it a bit better. Starting up some of the key strokes in the tail. Again, like I say, everything has to be covered with lines, so it's just a case of going back in and adding them in with the appropriate pencil. Because one of the beautiful things about HB, especially at 0.5, is that you can do it and it'll be quite flat. which isn't a great thing. But then you've got the ability to go in afterwards with a pin sharp 2B or a 4B and almost go over those lines or add in key ones that you haven't managed to add in, which you'll see me do later on. So it's starting to come together now. Just great big dashes across there. And actually, I mentioned that I don't do any shading. The way that I used to draw when I studied architecture was to do dashes like that across everything. I would never really use a sort of a heavier pencil or whatever it is to do an all over tone. That was very rare. I used to prefer to do lots of small lines because for me, it depends how you do it. Some people prefer to do pointillism, so you'll build up your depth with small dots, almost like what I'm doing now. But I prefer to do long dashes, and I use that. So across the whole of the leg, the bottom leg, as you can see, I've just done lines across it. And because it's consistent, to me, that looks like it's a very clean way of reading a drawing. So if you were to add some depth, you probably see me do it a bit later on as well. Going in on the detail, you'll probably find that you are drawn to different areas over what I'm doing. So it would be unwise to kind of just stick to what I'm doing. I think you'd find the areas that you want to focus on. What you can start to see in the head is that I'm trying to build up almost a ridge of hair, and you can see that there's a lighter bit and it goes straight into a darker bit. The benefit of that is you do get that depth. So your position of lines, you can emulate that. And it's a lot darker almost to the left of the head than it is near his eye. So switch to a 2B again just to add some of the darker lines, because I think at this point it was bothering me that I hadn't really got as much depth as I wanted. I'm not going to lie, guys, this recording session stressed me out, because you try and... The thing that you have ages to focus on when you're doing it yourself, you don't really have the luxury of time here, because I was trying to do it within daylight hours, and it wasn't the greatest, especially with, like I said, I've done it about 3 times at this point. So one thing that I'm picking up on there in those lines I was making on top of the head is that the 0.5 is actually too thick. What I'm doing now is I'm adding in tiny little kind of dots and also small dashes around the eye, which have helped to kind of make it not just a kind of an arc. It's got stuff coming off of it, which implies it's got tiny little hairs. Just adding in where the whiskers are now. So those little dots, the sort of darker areas being indicative of where there are whiskers. And feel free to let us know if this isn't exactly how you'd like to see something being drawn. Because I think if I were to have reshot this, I probably would have given you more close-ups of exactly the mark making I was doing. I think it's difficult when I'm when I was trying to master videography without my wizard Maddie, because ordinarily I'd have someone to help me, but lockdowns kind of impeded that. Building up those little details very faintly. Some bigger gestural lines coming back in down the bottom now. So this video is actually sped up by 3. So sometimes I think, because I'm watching this back now, sometimes I'm thinking, oh, that looks quite manic. But actually it wasn't and you can imagine it's nowhere near as fast as that. And I am actually having time to think about the lines that I'm doing in between. So you can see here I'm doing more dots. That's going to be the theme of this. I think around the middle, it's very much it's kind of like it's a completely different type of fur. So you gesture at that, and actually you don't have to have the amount of lines everywhere, because obviously I've said there's lines in a lot of places, but you don't have to have them. There are areas where this Dormouse is a lot lighter, which is around his belly, and that's because the coloration of a Dormouse kind of it ombres a little bit, which is what you want to try and get with the mark making. There's a lot of lines to be added at the bottom, I suppose. And I will add as well, actually, because there's in the original edit, we put this at the beginning of the video. This drawing is going to be up for grabs on our Instagram. So all you've got to do is go onto the post, which is of the illustration, and just comment and suggest someone to join our daily drawing challenge that maybe isn't part of the box. So what we're doing over on Instagram, if you weren't aware, is we put a prompt up every day. There's me saying about the work from right to left to right even. I don't do that. But I will be about to show you what I do instead. Daily drawing challenge. So we put a prompt up each day, and we share the work, or some of the work, depending on how much there is, because sometimes it's too much and we can't put everything on. We share a dose of it on our stories. So that's a great thing to do to keep people busy. We've been doing it since the beginning of lockdown. I use a piece of paper to rest my drawing hand on when you think you're at risk of smudging or ruining the piece. So one of the great things about this camera is it does autofocus, but this is not playing ball because it wants to focus on my hand rather than drawing, which is annoying to watch back. So just finishing up the connection between lines, just making sure it's really clear what you're articulating with the movement of the hair. But the signed version of this drawing, this drawing with the signature on it will be available to win, and all you have to do is comment. So very little left to do now, just wrapping up the back edge. Just joining the difference between the larger strokes and the more kind of dotty or small dashes, because you don't want to go straight from one to the other. So you can see, using my rubber, sometimes I place lines, I don't like them, same as anyone else. More dots. There's a bit of that sort of hashing that I mentioned earlier, where I'm shading, but I'm not shading. I'm using lines that have got a closer or further away proximity to each other to add darkness. Didn't like that bit either. Goodbye. So we are almost there. I'm going to take a 4B very soon, because, like I say, the great thing about HB is that it's quite flat, but you do need to add extra depth. So one of the things I like to do is to add a very nice, neat line around the edge of a drawing. You'll see this in part. Didn't like that one either. I like to kind of pick up bits like there. That's going to add a very dark, crisp kind of section to the drawing, which wasn't there before. And I find it just helps wrap it up. It kind of seals the deal. Some people don't like doing it, and I think there is an element of realism. The face drawing that I've got in the magazine, I've showed you the difference between having an outline and not having an outline. I prefer to have an outline, but I can see that it's more realistic almost if you don't, because a person's face doesn't have a great big line around it. But I just think artistically I prefer it. So almost done the base, added to the base of the outline. So now I've got to do the top, and this is a different ball game. So that's a very, like I mentioned, the face is kind of the focal point, and you don't want to go heavy on it too much. But these are very faint little gestures to kind of seal it. You don't need it all up, like completely over it. Adding a bit to the tail, doing that edge. And this bit here I thought was particularly faint. Looking at it the whole time, I wondered when I was going to go back and sort that out. Now I'm just adding little bits, like little flashes of slightly darker lines. Again, you can go too dark, which is why I've removed that. It stands out too much. You know, you don't want it to be drawing the eye over the eye. You definitely want the eye to be the focus. There's some slightly darker areas with the dots. You can almost imagine you're kind of not stabbing quite, but you're pushing down like you are stabbing the paper to make those marks. Everyone knows how to make a dot, but it can be quite, you know, pointed, and you can almost do it in a direction which makes them slightly longer. Really get into the little details now. One of the cutest things about this original source piece of photography is how he's holding his tail. So I wanted to make sure that was super clear from reading, that he's, you know, curled up in a little ball, and the depth of his hands holding that tail is as cute as you want it to be, or as cute it is in the original. And there you go, just some finishing kind of flourishes. I just felt it needed a bit more depth around this bit where he's kind of curled up. And these touches, or some of these touches, would be incredibly light because you don't want a 4B to kind of go in like a wrecking ball. I'm quite happy with that. Add it back in with a HB, trusty HB. And there we have it. So here's a little flash around. You can see that the lines change across it, and also to the left here you can see you've got cross hatching almost to differentiate. This is one of my drawings. I've done this a few times, as you can see, and it just shows you the difference that you can get. Like in the hands here, I've got the crossing of lines, which, as I mentioned, I don't use shading per se, but I do that instead.
Hopefully in an hour and a half's time, or whatever length of time after this it takes you to do it, you will have a finished Dormouse illustration or something which utilises some of the skills that I've taught you. And very keen to see what you've done, and also if this was of any use, so drop us some comments below. This here is going to be up for grabs, so we're going to put this on our Instagram. So if you want to win this original, it's going to be signed. All you have to do is go and comment on that post. Well, thank you so much for watching, guys. We hope you enjoyed that, and check your inbox on the 15th of July for the next one. See you later.